Specifically, we're on chapter 18, verse 96.
Verse 96, chapter 18. Go.
Na sukhi na java dukhi, na virakto na sangavan, na mumukshurna va mukto, na kinchinna cha kinchina. The wise one is neither happy nor miserable, neither attached nor unattached, neither liberated nor an aspirant for liberation. He is neither this nor that.
So, the mark of the woman of steady wisdom, the wise one. She is identified with the self. She's no longer concerned with the changes, the issues in the mind. Get out. Get out of the mind. Now, the paradox is, this is the most effective way I have found to heal the mind. When the mind quits believing its own stories. Very vividly, one can. Someone's asking questions about the mind. And Swamiji said, the mind is a sewer. He didn't say, your mind is a sewer, my mind is a sewer, people in ignorance's minds are sewers. Mind is a sewer. It's a wonderful metaphor if you think about it. So what is a sewer? Well, first of all, there's water running through it, and then excrement. Excrement is our stupid thoughts and feelings and memories and resentments and concerns about the future and regrets about the past. But what's the substratum? Actually, it's clear water. So we're no longer concerned with I need to deal with my issues and I have this problem with my relationships. Even I want this, I will feel better if I have that. Or I have to heal this problem in my past. It's not so much that I'm going to dump thought by thought. In the beginning, we may need to work on that. But there comes a point when this whole lump of our suffering, this lump of small self, we quit believing our mind. Whatever form arises, no big deal. It's not real. And again, Fang and I were talking about this before class. Personally, I believe this is one of the great values of a meditation retreat, like a Vipassana retreat, as opposed to some psychological process. In a psychological process, And it can be of value at one level of our unfoldment. But we're all in there working with our issues. But what do you do on a Vipassana retreat? What do you do if you're sitting? How many hours a day do you sit on a Goenka retreat?
Almost 11 hours.
Yeah. So what do you do if a memory comes up?
You just sit there.
Yeah. And what happens to it eventually?
Dissipates.
Yeah, maybe hang out there for an hour. But then you got 10 other hours and 9 other days. And what do you see about it? What's your experience on retreats?
Basically, I see that it's an illusion, or like it's separate from me.
You have to speak a little louder. I'm all plugged up.
I see that the thought, memory, sensation even is separate from me. It's not me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's phenomena.
But if I use the term reify it, this is serious business. This is trauma. Then what happens to it? It becomes more and more being. You get further and further identified with it. And this is not suppression. You don't suppress in a meditation retreat. You can't. It's too energetic. After a while, the psyche just can't push all that shit down. How do we predominantly repress issues? We distract ourselves from them. We want to fix them. I eat at them, I sex at them, I watch movies at them, I go do something else. I'm not present. Meditation, no place to go, no place to run, no place to hide. You're just there. Any thoughts on this? So again, even in the end, we give up concerns with bondage and liberation. Both bondage and liberation occur to the mind. The self is ever free. When are you ever not you? Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Vikshepapi na vikshiptaha samadho na samadhiman jardye api na jaro dhanyaha pandityepi na panditaha. The Blessed One is not distracted even in distraction. He is not he is not in meditation even in samadhi. He is not dull even in a state of dullness, and he is not learned even though possessed of learning.
So I call it, you put the robot on automatic pilot. Let the body, mind, intellect do its prarabdha, fulfill its life action. So if the mind he's using the word vikshepa, projecting and involved in the world, so what? I am none of that. If the desire to sit in meditation arises, so what? So you feel crappy, you're feeling sick. You take cold medicine, you feel dull. So what? One thing is gone. Oh, I really need this in order to be happy. Gone. I was talking with some friends last night about joy. Question was, what brings us joy? So they were listing all the external things that bring them joy. Am I going to talk about this or not? Okay. Well, in my spiritual tradition, we say joy is my essential nature. And the cause of the agitation is when I want things different than what they are. When my mind is jonesing, when my mind is craving, when my mind is attached. So what I endeavor to do is let go. Accept things as they are. I love that one phrase from Yoga Vasishtha. Why try to cover the world in leather when you can wear shoes? The moment is perfect, just as it is. Any thoughts? Next one.
Mukto yatha sthiti swastha krita kartavya nirvritaha samha sarvatra vetrashnayan smaratya kritam. The liberated one who abides in the self under all conditions is released from the idea of actions and of duty. He is the same everywhere, and due to the absence of desires in him, does not brood over what he has done and what he has not done.
Yes. So does that mean the man or woman of wisdom doesn't make mistakes with reference to the world? We tend to look at the Mahatmas, oh, they're perfect. Everything they do is an action of God. Well, that's true. It's also true about everybody else, too. I remember one very interesting conversation I overheard. So this fellow came to Swamiji, and this was either the last camp in 93 or it may have been 92. And he was very honest. He said, my wife, who had been a disciple of Swamiji's, since the 60s, had decided like some long time ago, that she was going to take on brahmacharya. And this fellow, the husband, was saying that I'm having great difficulty with that. And Swamiji said, I didn't know this. Swamiji didn't know? He said, what she's doing is wrong. She has a duty to do. So what I saw is, okay, the Mahatma didn't know something about a very close disciple. You know? So And we can say and do things that may inadvertently hurt or harm people. Don't do it on purpose. All of us do that. I think it's important to make the distinction between doing something to hurt someone and doing something that hurts someone. Do you understand what I mean? Sometimes we're just living our lives, and inadvertently, someone takes something the wrong way, or we forget something, or whatever. If you've hurt or harmed somebody and you can clean it up, do so. But inside, let it go. No point. We cannot change the past. No point in going there. If you are a child and someone abuses you, you are a victim. But if you're 30 years old and you're rehashing that, that's your klesha, not the abuser's. You're holding on to it. So we have to learn to let it go. Stay in the now, in the present moment, forgetting the past, allowing the future to be unknown. Be right here, right now. Will you watch in this moment the Lord's incredible Leela, the play of name and form in front of my eyes. With all its incredible intensity, and not my head. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Na priyate vadhyamano nindya mano na kupyati novo naivo dvijati marane jivane nabhinandati. The liberated in life does not feel pleased when praised, nor does he feel annoyed when blamed. He neither rejoices in life nor fears death.
Yes. So the practice for you and me that's implied is this sense of being empty, letting everything pass through. So you're making some pasta, and you pour the pasta water and the pasta through the colander, and the water just drips through. That's the kind of mind we need to have. Just be empty, let it pass through. Now, most of us are willing to take on the practice to attempt to let go of blame or censure or criticism because it's so painful. Why is it hard? Because by that point, we're probably already identified. Why? Because when someone says, oh, you're so wonderful, I love you, you make me so happy, you're the most wonderful person in the world, I would be absolutely lost without you. We own it. Then when it changes, not if, when you hurt me, and all of a sudden, and we can't let go because we're already identified. You want to take everything everybody says as if it were nonsense. Gobbledygook, fripty fropty, ootsy bootsy whoopee. How does that make you feel? Nothing. But it's gibberish. Oh, you're a wonderful person. You're so smart. You are a little better than everybody else, you know. It's the truth. You know, you're prettier, you're smarter, you're more insightful. You're a loser. You're never going to be with anybody. You're going to be alone. Even when you've got a partner, your heart's just shut down like a stone. You've got to see both the praise and the censure, just like the gibberish. You're polite. Oh, you did a great job at work. You say, thank you. Don't let it land. Yoga is not a program of self-improvement. It's not a program of building self-esteem. It's a program of self-forgetting. It's a program of self-abandonment. Any thoughts on this?
I find it's easier to let go of the praise and censure when it comes from the outside, but I tend to hold on to it when I judge myself positively or negatively. Yeah.
Okay, what I want you to do is give me an analysis of the space in the cup. Is it good or is it bad? Which?
Neither.
Is it successful or a failure?
Neither.
Tune your mind up. Look behind your eyes. Is the self in you good? Is the self in you bad? Light the space. If all it is an internalized voice from our childhood, which oftentimes it is, don't believe it. Now, the psychologist will say the voices that says you're bad, you're not good enough. We want to reframe that. Yes, you're good enough. Yes, you're okay. Yoga says, drop the both. vast and empty like the sky. Jim, you're not a very nice person. That's right, I'm not. You're not very kind. That's right. I'm not. Oh, Jim, I need you. I don't think we'll ever get enough Vedanta from you. Don't believe a word of it. That was pretty cool. What was that?
Something on Mark's end.
Are we still online?
Yeah. Sounds like a meditation bell.
All right. Next verse. Do you need to deal with that?
I dealt with it. Just get back to the main screen. Okay. Nathavati jana kirnam naranya mupashantadhi tatha yata tatha yatra tatra sam evavatishti. The serene-minded master seeks neither the crowded place nor the solitude of the forest. He remains the same under any condition, in any place.
So those of us, when we're still identified with the ego, are concerned about environments that may be unpleasant to us or pleasant to us. Oh, I don't like to go into the crowded city. It's too agitating, or I can't be around these people. Their energy is takes something from me. Or antithetically, don't bother me. I'm going to spend my time in the temple or the church. I need to be in a sattvic environment. Now, of course, different locales, different people have different energy. Duh, of course they do. And we may have preferences. Swami Tapovan did not like to come down any further onto the Gangetic plane. He didn't come any lower than Rishikesh. He loved to spend his time higher up in the Himalayas. Rishikesh, Gangotri, Uttarkashi, Kailash he even went to. But preference is different than insistence. If your prarabdha karma has placed you in a particular environment, can you be at peace and accept it? Not resist it. Be present. Any thoughts on this?
Jim, I have a question.
Yes.
You've also mentioned before in the past that sometimes the best way of going down this path is to have a satsanga, a sangha, a community, right? Like spend time with wise or holy people, or have a community who are like-minded. And yet you're also saying that, I guess at the final stage, it doesn't matter what the environment is.
It depends on, you're right, depends on what level of our practice we're at.
And it's just kind of like you feel into it, you feel whether or not these environments or certain individuals are conducive to the path that you're following at that given moment.
Well, when we say that the root cause of liberation is sadhu sangha, that means if you can find a woman or a man of realization to hang out with, then it goes quickly
Hmm.
because they can continually turn your mind back upon the self. Yes, it can be of value to have a sangha, a kula, a group of friends and people that you're with who are committed to the life of yoga. Now, this is very interesting. You know what going to an ashram is like? Marrying 20 people you've never met before. Guess what? Just because you go into the ashram or the monastery doesn't mean you leave your character defects behind. Yeah. It's just that we all have a similar intention. An ashram is not a bastion of sainthood. A sangha is not a bastion of sainthood. It's a hospital for souls. And if you hold it in that way, then you won't be disappointed. They're not very spiritual people. They're just like the people on the outside. Yeah, it's true. So, unless we want to be hermits, there's no avoiding the human condition. That's been my experience. Those of us who are very sensitive to energy find that we can be buffeted by our environments. Some spiritual traditions teach protection. Surround myself with white light. I'm going to do these energetic things to protect myself. I'm of a different school. I'm of the school of whatever energy is in the now. Karmically, I've drawn it.
Mm.
Therefore, at least try to quit resisting and be present to it. And if it makes my subtle body shake, rattle, and roll, just be present to it. At least for a bit. Sometimes, I'm getting out of here. Is that helpful?
That is, yeah.
It's not easy. It's not easy at all. But lots and lots of spiritual traditions talk about protection.
Mhm.
And in the end, I think there's a better way. One of the jokes I have is not really a joke. I have a contagious case of health. Why should I have to catch disease? Why can't they catch my health? Why do I have to be overwhelmed by negative energies? Why can't they be brought healing and peace?
I have another question on this.
Sure.
If you don't mind. I remember a while ago you were telling me about a friend who would almost have, as you mentioned, taken a friendship hostage. She will only talk about herself, right? And only talk about her grievances and woes. And she, you guys would go to lunch and it was just always about her all the time. So in that case, is it because the health that you had was not enough to overcome her negativity?
Oh, in the end, we're not powerful enough to fix other people.
But you also decided to put, I think, a boundary around that. You basically stopped hanging out with her as much, right?
Well, I go by intuition.
Okay.
Like I say, I rarely make absolutist decisions about relationship. Now, I do see her on a regular basis. And I care for her, and she cares for me. Now that I think we haven't been to lunch with her in a while.
Mhm.
But the yogi endeavors to accept everyone as perfect the way they are, right where they're supposed to be. I was talking with another friend whom I knew from my old church job, and he had a master's degree in theology from the Dominican school. He was on staff at my old church job. And this is like 15 years later. Now he's taken a chaplaincy training program. And he's really transformed by it. It's wonderful. One of the things that he's working on is to get out of his head with all these theological ideas, all these judgments about the way it's supposed to be. Because when you're in a hospital room with someone in crisis, first of all, you're powerless. You can't come up with ways to fix them. You can't superimpose your particular religious beliefs on them. That's not your job as a chaplain. So he was talking about learning to just what he called a ministry of presence. Wonderful word. And I asked him, well, has this transformed your relationship? He says, oh, absolutely. It's far more accepting of people without the compulsion to give advice, to fix them, to be reactive by what they're doing, and stuff like that. It's good practice. It's a very good practice. And where he got really called on it, where they pulled his covers, is they had, I think they called them practicums. Did you have those when you were in school?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
So did they tape them?
No, not in school, but I had other training where I was on tape. Yeah.
But in school, did they observe you working with people?
Sometimes, yes.
And then you'd go and they tell you what you did well and then where your challenges were? Did they?
Yes.
Isn't that painful?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, because a lot of times we're completely unconscious of the ways in which we relate. Then in psychology, we have these things called transference and countertransference. So transference, the client or the patient sees you as mother, sees you as former husband, stuff like that. Countertransference is that we feel that energy and then we start projecting stuff onto the client. But what you can do is you can use your own subtle body as a diagnostic device for the other person. You don't have to buy into the countertransference. You don't have to think it's real. They are blah, 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 blah. Did that make sense? Yes?
Yes.
Let me see if I can give you a real life example. All right. So one of the things that I began to see is that I would see young gay men come into AA, usually newly sober, and I would be enormously sexually attracted to them. I would never act on it, but I could feel it. Then I realized over and over again, when those people started to really share deeply, almost without exception, they were sexualized at a very early age or childhood victims of some kind of sexual abuse. And it wasn't so much my attraction to them, it's that they were just casting all this unconscious sexual energy everywhere. They're casting that out. And then in my subtle body, I pick it up. But it would subjectively feel like, oh, they're hot. But then I learned to say, that's a person who probably has a deep wound about childhood sexualization. I would use my own subtle body as a diagnostic tool. I don't know if there's something within the mental health field that's comparable to that.
Yeah, I mean, we were taught very similar techniques at CIS. Yeah, using the countertransference to understand.
Yeah, speak a little louder. I'm deaf as a post today.
We were taught to use the countertransference as a tool to understand the client better and to understand their experience in the world better.
Yeah. But the problem comes is when I hook the I thought onto it. So for me, it wasn't that I am attracted to them. Oh, my subtle body's going blah, 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 blah. Because you have the detachment from it. So the yogi endeavors to always be in the posture of Sakshi Bhava, the attitude of the witness, the witness, the witness. I hope that's useful. Okay, next one.
So that's the end of chapter 18.
Okay.
Starting chapter 19. Janaka uvacha tattva vijnana sandansham adhyaya hridayodarat nana vidha paramarsha shalyodhara kritomaya. Janaka said, using the pincers of knowledge of truth from the innermost recesses of my heart, I have extracted the thorn of adverse opinions.
Extracted the thorn of what?
Adverse opinions.
Yeah. So, using the tweezers of knowledge. So you got a thorn in your finger, you get your tweezers to pull it out. So in my heart, I have the thorn of adverse opinion. They have this problem, they have that problem, they're like this is what's wrong with them. My judgment. First of all, one of my favorite slogans, which is so useful, you spot it, you got it. You got a finger pointing that way, there's 3 more pointing back this way. What do I do about it? Just be present. Nothing wrong with the world. nothing wrong with anyone or anything. Just be present. Become aware of the thorn in my own heart. Then how do I use the tweezers of knowledge to get it out? First and foremost, it's just the force of the past maturing, and it's not real. It's not real. It's just a thought. It's just a vritti. I think it's Hafiz who uses the metaphor that for the Sufi, the person of wisdom, these comparable to thorns of the heart, they're like little dust devils in the desert. And then they dissipate. Don't worry about it. What do we normally do? We have a reaction. And then we have what the Buddhists call the second arrow. Oh, I am a terrible person because when am I going to be done with this particular affliction? I'm no good. I'm a failure. No, it's not even really my fault. They're the ones who screwed up. Then I have layers of suffering upon suffering upon suffering, which my mind adds. Any thoughts? Next verse.
Kwa dharma, kwa cha va kamaha, kwa chartha, kwa vivekita, kwa dvaitam, kwa cha va dvaitam, swamahimna stithastya me. Where is piety? Where is desire? Where is wealth? Where indeed is conscience? Where is duality? And where again is non-duality? For me, who abides in my own grandeur.
So again, this idea of not believing the mind. So piety, meaning I'm religiously observant. I'm doing my yamas and niyamas. Now, by all means, I say, in the end, best practice, try not to be a jerk. Spend a lifetime on that one. But remember that the equipment by definition is finite. To think that your equipment is going to be perfect is like trying to count to the highest number. It's never going to happen. That doesn't mean license to be a jerk. It's liberty, not license. But one of the things I like to share, one of my favorite prayers, oops, because we all make mistakes at the world. woman of knowledge is beyond. And beyond the need to punish people when we think they have done wrong. I remember I was actually working with an AA sponsor once. And he kept saying, well, I just keep wanting to point out to this person what they're doing wrong. How's that working out for you? If you need to, you could use I statements. When you do X, Y, and Z, I feel this way. That's the best we can do. Give them information. But to say, you were doing this, you shouldn't. You're wrong when you did that. Usually doesn't work. And later on, frequently, if we could just let it pass through, oftentimes the other person quits doing the behavior because they're not getting their compulsive need for the reaction. It kind of drops away. It takes two people to fight. It only takes one person to be at peace. Fighting is always about my desires versus your desires. Any thoughts on this? Next one.
Qua bhutam qua bhavishyat va vartamanam api qua va qua desha qua cha va nityam samahimna sthitastame. Where is the past? Where is the future? Where even is the present? Where is the space? Where even is eternity for me who abides in my own grandeur?
So the idea here is for the person of wisdom who no longer believes the mind itself. Past, future, present, space, existence, non-existence. They're all just ideas. Whatever thought arises, it's not real. Sarvam Maya, Sarvam Maya. All is Maya. All is bliss. Next one.
Qua chatma, qua chavanatma, qua shubham tatha, qua chinta chinta, samahimna sthitastyame. Where is the self? Where is the not self? Where similarly are good and evil? Where is anxiety or non-anxiety for me who abides in my own grandeur?
So again, all these practices which the sadhak takes on, discrimination between the self and the not self, endeavoring to drop this and that, all of value at one level of our practice. But for the siddha, the accomplishment, it's like the anorexic who needs to discriminate. No, you're not gross, fat, and obese. You're actually too thin. They may need to remind themselves of that over and over again. No, 98 pounds is painfully thin. For your height, you should weigh between 110 and 125. But for a person who's got a healthy idea of their body, there's no effort. I feel good today. My clothes fit. So also for the woman, steadiness. She's given up the struggle. All is well. All will be well. All right, we'll quit here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha.